那接下来这位嘉宾呢，他是作为美国华人的二代，他是一位 conservative 这个 writer，写出了华人二代的心声。那他今天呢，就想跟我们讲讲他是如何成为一个保守派的记者和作家。美国华裔为什么不能够再继续沉默，也不能够再继续埋头赚钱，对政治不闻不问。这位嘉宾的名字呢，就是 Kenny Xu。Mr. Kenny Xu, he works for Young Americans Foundation, writes on race and identity politics from Washington, D.C. So today, he's going to talk to us about how he became a conservative journalist and of why Asian Americans can't afford to be silent and keep their heads down about politics anymore. Welcome, Mr. Kenny Xu. Can you hear me, Mr. Kenny Xu?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. 谢谢. 你好. And thank you so much to everybody at the Chinese American Alliance. I've been so thankful for all of you guys, what you've done to support this movement for rights, for meritocracy, for the American dream. This is something that I've been covering for a little while now. And I'd like to share a presentation with you guys if you don't mind.
Yes, you're the co-host, so you can share. You have the right to share your screen.
Good.
Okay.
No, I will share this screen with you guys. Okay. All right. So do you guys see this presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Do you see this presentation in Inconvenient Minority?
Yes, I see it.
Okay.
We see it. Yes.
So I titled this presentation an Inconvenient Minority. How is
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. How Asian Americans break the left's narrative on race. And the reason why I wanted to talk about, an Inconvenient Minority, why I wanted to title my book, and this is about my upcoming book on the Asian American fight for equal rights across America, because there's so many different fights going on, and all of you guys know this. Everybody here at CAA knows this. It's the Harvard discrimination case, the No on Prop 16 fight, which, by the way, I helped to start up the media outreach for the No on Prop 16 campaign. So those of you guys who are involved in California, I'm very grateful for all that you do there. The Harvard discrimination case, Bill de Blasio's, of course, taking down of the SHSAT, of the specialized exams, the things going on in Washington State and Montgomery County, Maryland, all of these things need to be chronicled. Why? Because we are in a moment right now in our country that is very new and very dangerous. It is a moment of identity politics. So what is identity politics? Identity politics is the form of politics that divides people into groups based on the privileged and the oppressed. It's based basically in cultural Marxism, right? It's cultural revolution principles, right? It is Mao saying you will be treated based on your background. You won't be treated based on your character, but because you are, part of the landowner population, or because you're part of the peasant population, you will get this, or you will not get this, or you will deliver this, or you will not deliver this. But it's the same thing, except it's happening in America, and it's based on race. It is saying if you are a white person, you are a privileged, and therefore you deserve to get treated differently than if you're a black person, because if you're a black person or a Latino person, you're oppressed because the system has come and oppressed you because of all of these arguments. The issue with that argument, and this is the fundamental issue with that argument, is an issue that Asian Americans are uniquely situated in our country to speak on. Are we privileged or are we oppressed, right? Because in the left's narrative, we have faced systemic discrimination in this country. I mean, if you guys don't know this, the Chinese are the only ethnic group in America ever to face exclusion to face a government policy of exclusion. The Chinese Exclusion Act in the late 1800s banned most Chinese from entering this country. We're the only ethnic group that has ever faced any kind of policy like that. I mean, of course, we talk about Japanese Americans too, how they were interned during World War II. There's been a lot of anti-Asian racist policies in this country, and that has prevented, you know, a good number of opportunities. Now, that being said, Asian Americans on some measures achieve at a level that is commensurate or even better than whites, right? We know this. We have higher education rates than whites, lower out of wedlock births than whites, and of course, and blacks and Hispanics and those kinds of things. We have higher incomes per capita than whites. So on one hand, we're oppressed because, you know, we have this systemic discrimination historically, but on the other hand, you know, we achieve at a level that's commensurate with that. Well, so what category do we belong? The left does not know. And that is why the left suppresses the Asian American narrative from this country, because they do not like the idea that hard work and individual autonomy can lead to success. So let me just give you a brief, just a little bit of a brief story about me. And how I became a conservative, right? How I became a conservative talking about these issues. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. And then my family were immigrants. My mom and dad were Chinese immigrants. They were seeking the American dream. They came from China in 1990. Dad became eventually a small business owner, right? But when they came here, they didn't have much at all. Like I think a lot of people here as well. But they believed in this country because they believed this was a land of freedom and a land of opportunity. And they taught me to value hard work. They taught me to value personal responsibility. You know, I also grew up as a Christian. I believe that God impressed upon me the duty to speak the truth, right? I think that, you know, just like what's going on in our culture today, we need to speak out. We need to speak out, if nothing else, but because of my religious faith. I also am a writer. I started writing at the age of 6. I wrote my first book at the age of 9. It was just this fiction book. And then I published my first science fiction novel at 14. I always loved to write. I was a huge writer. That's what kind of propelled me through this. We moved to Princeton, New Jersey, and I was around a lot of liberal people, right? If you're, you know, the child of Princeton professors, which a lot of my classmates were, you know, very liberal, you know, people who thought that, you know, if you're a conservative, you don't care about the poor. And then I said, well, I'm not sure if that's true. You know, I do care about the poor. That's why I want to teach them the values that help them not to be poor. You know, I was talking with the president of CAA, Chuck, a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking, he made a great statement. You know, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. So I think those are universal principles that we as conservatives hold. So I want to tell you a little story about growing up in college. So I went to Davidson College, a very a liberal college in the South. And my call counselor one day, she was this Black Lives Matter person, very, you know, into social justice. She gathers all of this. I was a sophomore at the time at college. And she gathers all of us here together and she says, let's everybody share 3 items from your cultural heritage. So of course, very stereotypically, everybody who was a different skin color shared an item from their, you know, skin color, supposedly, you know. So there was a Mexican kid there. He shared like a taco or something like that. And there was a Korean kid there. He shared, you know, his item, which was a bowl of kimchi or something like that. And then it came to me, and I thought I was just wanting to be funny. I said, you know, these are my 3 items, and my 3 items were my Constitution, my Bible, and my a paper target that I shot at a shooting range. my hall counselor got pretty mad about that. But I said, this is my cultural heritage. I grew up, I was born in this country. I was born in America. I love my country and I love freedom. I obviously, care very deeply about my Chinese heritage as well. But I wanted to make a little point that my heritage is not necessarily tied just to, where my ancestors came from, but also to this new life that I've built in this country based on these ideals. That led to my hall counselor got pretty angry at that. She said, Kenny, there are some people out there who believe that Asian people are actually white. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, yeah, because, they're just as privileged as white people. And I said, how could you think such a thing? How could you think such a thing that Asian people are just as privileged as white people? We come from completely different backgrounds. We face discrimination in this country. It's like it was totally ignorant of history. And I realized at that moment that there is this movement on the left to put Asians in a box, to put Asian Americans in a box, to call us so-called white adjacent people because we achieve. So anyway, I started to write on these issues, and I got invited to, I started to write for publications like The Federalist, The Daily Signal, and I started to write on the Harvard admissions case, especially. And everyone here is familiar, I'm sure, with the Harvard admissions case. I got invited to speak at Harvard's Copley Square. I started writing more. I spoke about equal rights there, and eventually I got on the cover of the New York Times Magazine for this article that said, "Where does affirmative action leave Asian Americans?" As you can see, I was on the cover in a certain sense. If you look at the cover of the magazine that is at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that I technically am on the cover. At least my eyes are at the bottom left of the cover.
Your presentation is not moving.
Oh, really?
It's still on the first page, though.
Oh, okay. That's weird. Okay, I'm sorry.
Now it's moving.
Okay, now is it moving?
Yeah, now it's changing now. Yeah, we can
okay.
speak.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry about that. All right, you guys probably didn't follow as much of the presentation as you could have here, but we're good now. We're good. Okay, so anyway, you can see at the bottom left of this corner here of the New York Times Magazine, that's me, or at least those are my eyes, and there's a picture of me in the feature story of the New York Times Magazine as well. So I wanted to talk about this question about where Asian Americans are today. So where are Asian Americans today? So in mainstream discourse, Asian Americans are known as, some people would call us the model minority. I wouldn't say that we're the model minority, because what are we modeling, right? I mean, we don't come here to try to teach or patronize other minorities about who we are. We come here because, we stand up for our own values. We're not trying to be models to other people. So I would prefer to use the term meritocratic minority. We're the meritocratic minority, meaning that we generally, or disproportionately, not everybody, but most of us, we generally have the values that allow us to achieve middle and upper middle class stability. That is, we have the skills. We tend to focus on building skills, right? On building skills, building education to make it to, say, the top 30% of society, right? That is, we have the values, we have the strong educational backgrounds, in math and science and STEM, and we have stable families. And I think those are all really, really good things, because in that sense, right, these are values that everybody universally should have, to be able to have hard work, to be able to have personal responsibility, to be able to have those strong educational backgrounds. But here's the thing. These are all good things that Asian Americans tend to cultivate. Here's the issue. but because we choose generally stable and economically successful paths, and because we challenge the left's orthodoxy, and the left, remember, the cultural Marxism, wants to believe that anybody who is successful doesn't deserve to be there. We challenge that because we come from disadvantaged backgrounds and we still achieve in this society. So we challenge the left's orthodoxy that minorities must necessarily be oppressed victims, right? But then the third thing is that we don't have the cultural capital to be able to fight back. There are not many Asian Americans in culture that are really standing up for Asian American values. We engender a lot of resentment. We engender resentment for our success from mainstream elite liberals in America. And that's what you see with the Harvard discrimination case, right? I could talk about the Harvard discrimination case. I'm sure you guys know very well about all the facts of those, so I'm not going to talk on it. I'm going to use a different example about how elites tend to respond to Asian American success, okay? I want you to take a look at this graph here. This graph are the percentage of employees at Facebook who are Asian, okay, at Facebook. Okay, so if you look at the blue line shows the percentage of all employees, of all Facebook employees who are Asian. It's 45%.
It has happened more than 4 or 5 times.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, anyway. The percentage of employees who are Asian at Facebook is about 45%. But if you look at the percentage of leadership at Facebook who is Asian, it's only 25%. There's a 50% penalty between the employees that come into Facebook and the Asian employees that eventually become leaders. By the way, this is not replicated among any other minority, right? If Black, white, Hispanic, all of them have the same percentage of total employees and leadership. But Asian Americans are the ones who are uniquely suppressed in terms of promotion and advancement in these progressive elite, epicenters like Facebook. And one of the reasons is because of this new ideology on the left called diversity and inclusion. Now, most of you probably work in a big corporation. If you work in a big corporation, you're definitely familiar with the term diversity and inclusion. It's the new trend, and it is anti-meritocratic. It is anti-meritocratic. That means it is against meritocracy. Okay, and the reason it's very logical, right? Because if you're going to hire someone on the basis of race who is less qualified than another person, but because that other person is not your preferred minority, you're not going to hire them, then you are abusing the principles of meritocracy, right? Because supposedly you should be hiring people who are the best people. But if you instead hire and promote and those kinds of things, the people who are certain races, certain representations, then you are not hiring meritocratically. Okay, but the thing is, as diversity and inclusion has become an industry, it's partnered with these big businesses. Harvard actually was the leading progenitor of diversity and inclusion. Harvard University was the university that really brought this about, and all the other universities wanted to copy Harvard. And so they made this diversity and inclusion industry. Now, how does this affect Asian Americans, right? If you're Asian American in this country, a lot of us did not come here with vast social networks, right? We didn't come here with country clubs. We didn't come here rich. We bet on ourselves and we bet on our skills, right? We bet on our talent, our ability to succeed based off of our skills and our talent in this country. Basically, we bet on our merit. And when you see the decline of meritocracy in companies, you will see that negatively affect Asians, because if you're rich and well-connected, you can probably withstand the decline in meritocracy because you have connections that will be able to get you those nice jobs. And of course, if you play the victim in the diversity and inclusion industry, then maybe you could move up the ladder. But if you keep your head down and you just work and just continue to, try to do your job and do it as best as you can, you engender resentment upon these people, and that could actually lead to you being penalized for the work that and the productivity that you make. So this is why Asian Americans cannot be silent, cannot stay silent anymore. If we stay silent, we're going to be crushed by a left that is turned against the principles of meritocracy. The left has turned against principles of equal opportunity, of personal responsibility, of educational excellence, and against meritocracy, right? And those are the values that we traditionally believe in. And the left is going completely against all of those things. It's starting to want to discriminate on the basis of race again. You see this with California Proposition 16, right? I think one of the members here, Alan, was talking about that. California Proposition 16 will allow the government once again to replace merit with race. And once you replace merit with race, you can never go back. And think about what the benchmark that they use is for race. They use the total population of America. So if America is 15% Black, that means they want 15% Black people at every company, in the senior leadership of every company. And so even at Facebook, when even the leadership is 25%, Asian Americans are actually underrepresented in leadership in Facebook. But according to the left's ideology, Asian Americans are overrepresented, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's against the principles of meritocracy, but it's the way the country is going. So we can't stay silent. We need to frame our fight as not only one just for Asian Americans, but one for the principles of the American dream, right? Because this is something that not just Asian Americans believe. This is something that Americans need to believe again, that we should be treated on the basis of our hard work and our character, not the color of our skin. That is the dream of all immigrants who wanted to come to this country. They didn't come to this country to say, no, I want to be given things. I want to be handed out. I mean, some immigrants did, but the principled immigrants did not come in this country expecting handouts, right? The principled immigrants came to this country and say, if you give me a fair shot, if you treat me based on the content of my character, I will reward you with my hard work. And that's what our country is turning against. And this is why I'm so grateful to be, part of this Proposition 16 campaign, the No on 16 campaign, because we are stepping up in the political arena. Well, another way that Asian Americans can mobilize or need to mobilize is through culture, right? Andrew Breitbart, he's one of the leading conservative thinkers. He said, politics is downstream of culture, right? And which is true, because you see how, influential books and influential TV shows have changed the political consensus in our country. This new book on the left called White Fragility right now is becoming a huge bestseller. It's basically teaching people how to apologize for being white. And that's affecting our culture in a very negative direction. But, there's some good news here. There's some good news. I'm writing a book called An Inconvenient Minority. And what I want to do with this book is I want to chronicle our fight, your fight, against identity politics and for the American dream. The fight of not just you, the fights of the people in Proposition 16, the fights in the Harvard case. I'm the lead insider on the Harvard case. I traveled to Washington, to the state of Washington, when they did the I-1000 bill there. And I talked with some of the leaders there as well. And I'm chronicling their fight. And I'm chronicling your fight as well. And my book will be published by Diversion Books. It's a national nonfiction publisher in May 2021. I offer an insider's take on this Harvard admissions case, but really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to frame your fight in the lens of, what's important to all Americans, right? Because you're not selfish. You're not just people trying to get your kids into these schools. You're fighting for these very real, very important ideals. These ideals that you should be treated on the basis of your character, not on your race. Not for any reason. Race should become a less important part of this discussion. Instead, it is gaining ground. We have to tackle this. and Asian Americans are uniquely suited to tackle this. So here are a couple ways that you can follow me in my journey. First, you can help support and become a friend of the movement by following me and my writing. You can go to my Twitter page, twitter.com/KennyMShu. I talk about a lot of these issues on my Twitter, obviously in very short bursts, but I do talk about it. You can friend me on WeChat. This is Kenny Xu. On Facebook, my Facebook page, facebook.com/TheKennyXu. I write a lot of articles. So I'm a journalist, and I write a lot of articles. One of the articles that I wrote recently was on the Daily Signal, and it's about how Montgomery County, Maryland parents are suing their school system for discriminating against high-achieving Asian kids. You guys are all familiar with the story. Montgomery County wants to improve their diversity. They hire this consulting company. The consulting company comes and says, you need to change your admissions process. So they scrapped the test. They moved all of these things. They made it very opaque. It's not transparent. And Asian, and of course, people who attended these schools went down by over 20% in 1 year. 1 year. And so these parents are suing this system, and I wrote an article about it. So go take a look at my page and you'll see that. And spread the word, spread the word about this book, spread the word about the journalism that I've been doing. One thing I would really appreciate from you guys, if you could help, is just to help to make some good contacts, make me some good contacts with the Asian American community, because my focus right now is to make the best possible book for you guys and your cause as possible. And because I really believe in it and I really care about it, and I understand where our country is going and how we are the key. We are critical to taking it on, because we're the ones who are going to be negatively affected disproportionately by the decline in meritocracy. But if that doesn't stop, the rest of the country will soon follow. Lastly, I want to tell you about ways that you can financially support my book. Being an author is a tough task, but it is a rewarding task. And your financial support would greatly help, because I'm writing this book to aid your cause for equal rights. And I want what I'm really seeking to do, right, is I'm trying to write a book to impact the culture. That means I want this book to impact beyond just the Asian American community. I want people to pick it up in bookstores. I want people to pick it up, on the airport and the airplane and see what's going on here. I want it to be a mainstream bestseller, because these are the issues that people need to learn about and see about. So you can contribute, and I would just be thankful for any contributions that you guys have or want to give to me. And best of all, they're entirely tax deductible, because your contributions will be to a 501c3, which is my 501c3, the Center for Race and Opportunity. And it will be used specifically, it won't be used for my personal gain. It'll be used to do the research on the book and the marketing of the book. And what the people that I've talked with and publicists that I've talked with said, if you have $15,000 to spare, which is the goal, eventually, if you have $15,000 to spare, you can hire a really great publicist, and they will get your book out to the public, to the national media, and you can get in these channels and you can really go and promote this cause. So that's the goal. You can donate at my website, inconvenientminority.com or kennyshu.com. The links to the same site. kennyshu.com is just an inconvenientminority.com, but if you don't want to spell that, you can just go to kennyshu.com. So you can donate credit card, PayPal, whatever works for you. And your donations are tax deductible, and they also can be matched by your employer. So keep that in mind as well. So now I'm here to take any questions. You can reach me at my email, spread the word, kennymshu@gmail.com. Here's my website, kennyshu.com, inconvenientminority.com. Shishya. Thank you so much. And I'm here to take your questions.
Thank you, Kenny. I thought Mr. Harry Zhang has a question for you.
Sure.
He said, you mentioned many times on meritocracy,
yes.
And I agree with you strongly. However, do you think that meritocracy is a well-accepted principle in US? Something that you can talk about openly as equality or freedom, etc. Thanks for your presentation.
Right. That's a really good question, Harry. Here's the thing. The American dream is meritocracy. We call it something different, right? We call it the American dream, but the American dream basically articulated is you can come into this country with no background. You can come to this country poor. And if you work really hard, you can succeed in this country. What's implied in that? What's implied in that is that we are not going to look at your background. We are not going to care what country you come from. We're not going to care if you came here poor, if you came here rich. We're going to care, what can you do for this country? Can you be productive? Can you build up your skills? Can you build up your education? And that, so latent within the whole idea of the American dream, which all Americans, at least patriotic ones, really believe, is the idea of meritocracy. So I know the word meritocracy is kind of a wonky word. It's probably not a word that everybody uses, but it's a word that really matters, because it was the idea and the belief of so many immigrants who came here, to that they will be treated on the basis of their hard work and their character, that really propelled them to come here, build a life here, and make this country as successful as it is.
Yeah, I think about this meritocracy, a lot of people think they just read a few books, they got a degree, they become the best, person, they can govern, right?
Yeah.
But to me, that's not true. I think a lot of those people in the media, right? They think, oh, they're part of the meritocracy.
Meritocracy, yeah.
But I don't think that's true either. That's why, a lot of those people like, CNN and, those big New York Times, those people, they think that they're better than other people. Actually, that's not true too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, in the end, right, it's, we fight for equal rights, right? But equal rights doesn't mean equal outcomes. It means that we have the same procedures that we're going to treat people on. So if you come in and you're a different race than someone else, we should treat you exactly the same as if you were a different race. That doesn't mean that you are going to be equally as successful as the next guy. It doesn't mean that, but it means that we'll have the same process. And I think that is really what brought our country together, and identity politics is driving apart right now.
Thank you, Kenny. I also have a question for you.
Sure.
I wonder, how do you think about the split or a tear between two generations? I mean, the first generation of Chinese American and second generation as you. Because recently we saw some articles or some young generations, they talk about, I think they have different view with their parents on like the liberty and equality, like the lawsuit against Harvard, against like the Black Lives Matter campaign. They totally have different view as their parents. So I wonder, how do you think about that? And as a parent, I wonder, how would you suggest the parent to communicate with their kids? Because they complain their parents don't understand the mainstream value of America. They said that sometimes they even call their parents as racist. So as a second generation, I want to hear from you. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's very sad, because so many second generation people do take for granted the struggle that the first generation had when they come here, right? I think, when I was growing up, and you guys missed this slide, so I'll just show this slide to you here. This is a little about me. I knew some things about my mom and dad. I knew that they were immigrants I knew that they were immigrants. I vaguely knew about my dad's business at times. You know, I vaguely knew my mom's job. My mom was a CPA. But you know, but the media culture around me, you know, really influenced me. And I think that if the first generation is going to impress upon the second generation, you know, the gratitude for what the first generation did coming here, starting a new life, you know, leaving everything, you know, and sacrificing so much for their kids' success. I think we, whether you're first generation or second generation, we need to learn to tell our own stories, right? We need to learn to really impress upon our kids our experiences. You know, that may mean something like reading to your kid, you know, about your own personal story, or telling your kid your personal story at night, you know, and talking to your kid, you know, this is what I went through, you know, coming through this country. This is how, you know, I've been able to succeed, persevere, hard work, those kinds of things, you know, even those kinds of things. And we focus on telling our own story. I think that goes a long way, because America, you need to understand, I think a lot of people need to understand, and I didn't understand this. America is built on stories, right? And this is not just true about any country. This is true about any country, but this is especially true about America, because we always tell patriotic Americans the story of the founding of America, right? And how revolutionary it was, and how amazing and incredible it was. And sometimes people even believe it. We have to tell our own story to our kids as well.
Right, thank you very much. It sounds like you have a great family. Can you go back to your slides, because we missed the main part of it? Just go back and just slowly scroll so we can see, you know, see pictures.
Sure. So this is the first slide. This is the second slide, and about Asian Americans being at crossroads, identity politics dividing groups into the privileged and oppressed. This is based in cultural Marxism, which I talked about. You know, how the Cultural Revolution in China, you know, divided people into the privileged and oppressed, just like we're doing today. And how did that turn out? This is a little about being me. This is about, you know, how I grew up. I was a math major at Davidson College. I grew up in Richmond, Princeton, New Jersey. Mom and dad were immigrants. I'm a Christian. I'm a writer, those kinds of things. This is a story. This is when I was supposed to tell, this was the slide where I was supposed to tell the story of, you know, how I was called white by my social justice hall counselor, because, you know, I dared to say that, you know, I loved my country and I believed in these American principles and I believed in the American dream. She thought that was me trying to pretend to be white. And that really started my journey into this, and started getting me thinking, what do people really believe about Asian Americans? And the answer is unfortunately, a lot of people believe that we're just as privileged as white people. And this is this was the other slide that you guys didn't see. This is how I began my journalism career. I began to write on the Harvard admissions case. I got invited to speak at Harvard's Copley Square, and eventually got on the cover of the New York Times Magazine. So, and that's the picture of me in the feature story. Of course, the funny story about that. So the New York Times photographer comes over, he emails me and he says, "Hey, Kenny, can I take some photographs about you?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I was working in DC at the time. So he comes over. He's this nice guy. He takes like maybe 100 pictures of me, and we go all around DC, outside, inside, in a hotel, you know, in the park, those kinds of things. And the New York Times, they use one photo of me. They use this. Did they use a photo of me smiling or having fun? No, they used this one picture of me, you know, looking really somber at a bar alone. And I'm just like, this is the way that the left is portraying Asian Americans right now. They're trying to portray us as these loners, as these humorless people with no personality that is just trying to get into college. And that is just completely a wrong and deceptive program. But that is what they did with me. you know? So I don't even have to speak to that. It's just right there. So anyway.
Yeah, we have one person in the audience. He raised his hand. So
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, Kenny. Hi, everybody. I'm actually from Princeton, New Jersey. Kenny, I get your contact from your mom a few months ago. I'm very glad that we can talk through this forum. Sure. And I actually have been looking for. Obviously, you grew up in Princeton. You know how liberal this is. You can see Biden sign all over the place, BLM sign all over the place. I've been looking for conservative second generation Chinese American or Asian American that's hold a conservative value for a very, very long time. It's very rare. I'll tell you, I'm sure you know more than me on that. So it's very rare for a second generation Asian American, Chinese American to be conservative. So my question is, but I do obviously follow many, I really watch mainstream media anymore. I do watch them just because one, I used to study media when I came here 20 years ago. So I was a media study major 20 years ago. Yeah. So that's how I realized that this is really not what I signed up for, because they all teach about Marxism, critical thinking, all those things are very, very liberal kind of theory. But that's how they brainwash young people, not just Chinese America, young Chinese America, but every young America in general across the board. Yeah. So my question to you is, when I watch the YouTube, follow a podcast, follow some young Americans that hold conservative views. I don't see many Asian Americans hold that. I mean, Chinese Americans hold that. I mean, from your experience, obviously because of my age and my background, I don't get to see that many people that hold those conservative views in those type of background. So in your circle, how do you see that become a trend, or that is still kind of very rare? Maybe that's the reason New York Times started to interview you, because you are rare, right? So that's one question. I mean, what do you see among young Asian or Chinese American that holds a conservative view? And then the second question I have is a more generic question, which you already touched base a little bit. Grew up as a Chinese American, grew up in this country. Do you feel, quote unquote, discriminated because you hold a conservative view? My personal experience was when I was 20 years ago, when I was sitting at the graduate school, when I was sitting at the mass media and journalism graduate course, there are 20 students. There's only 1 or 2 American students that holds conservative view. Right. That person or those persons are basically silenced. Yeah. They just couldn't talk, because whenever they talk, they get laughed at. Is that still so grew up as a conservative Asian Chinese American? What's your experience?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second question first, and then I'll get to the first question because I think it's important. So the second question is, have I ever been discriminated against as a Chinese American? The answer is maybe.
Let me reframe this. I don't want this. I'm not going to the I'm not going to the identity politics. I'm just thinking, because of your conservative view, regardless of whether you are Chinese or Chinese American or American or even African American, is that being Is that being discriminated at all?
Well, the answer is, people discriminate in this. Do people have bias in this country? Of course people have bias in this country. The real problem is not that people don't have bias in this country. It's that bias runs across so many different dimensions. It can't possibly just be because of race, right? And the prevailing narrative right now is that the single most important bias right now is white bias against Black people. And is that a bias? Yes, that is a bias. Of course it is. There's also Black bias against white people, Black bias against Asian people, Asian bias against Black people, Asian bias against white people. Republican bias against Democrats and Democrat bias against Republicans. I think that that's probably the most polarizing bias right now. But that's never acknowledged, of course, because that's just assumed. But suddenly this white bias against Black people becomes a moral outrage. And so I'll tell you a story. When I was at Davidson College, I started the Davidson Young Americans for Freedom chapter. I was basically the leader of the conservative club at Davidson. And Davidson is a small school. It's about 2,000 people. So it was like a big high school. So everybody knew who I was, right? Because I wasn't afraid to express myself, because I brought conservative speakers. I brought Babe Buchanan. She was the former US Treasurer under Ronald Reagan. I brought them to talk about free speech. I brought them to talk about hard work. And I became instantly notorious on my campus. And I'll tell you what, people treated me worse because I was a minority. That's definitely true, because I was a minority conservative, because I didn't fit their narrative, because their narrative was that all minorities should be liberal. All Asian people should vote liberal, should vote Democratic, should vote a certain way, should speak a certain way, should talk about how oppressed they are. But I didn't want to talk about how oppressed I was, because I live in an amazing country, a free country, a country of opportunity. And does it have problems? Yes, it does. But that's why we got to build each other up as people. We can't tear each other down. And the left wants to tear each other down. So that's the answer to your second question. The first question is, why aren't more young Asian Americans conservatives, or young second generation Asian American conservatives? That's a little bit of a tough question, because you have to acknowledge that the media and identity politics is really, really a strong force, especially when you go to college and university. You get slapped from the moment you come into college. The moment you come to university, people are telling you, Asian people are victims just like everybody else, but they have to support Black Lives Matter. They have to support this. They have to support the idea that America is a racist, irredeemable country. And when you get into that mood, oftentimes, and this is an issue among people that I know in my community, a lot of times we just go along with it. We just go along with the narrative, because a lot of times we're just thinking, man, let me just keep my head down. Let me just get a good job, and I can move forward. I think that that's a good, this is what I was talking about in this slide, where we're known as the meritocratic minority, because we want to work hard, we want to keep our head down, and we want to have the values that allow us to achieve middle and upper class success and stability. And I think that that's a good thing. It really, really is a good thing. In fact, it's probably the best thing for our community right now. The way that this country is going, it's becoming increasingly unsustainable, and we will become increasingly penalized for doing that unless we speak up.
Okay, I think we got one audience, Xiaoying Jenny Yi. Can you talk?
Yes, I have a quick question. My name is Jenny, and I'm working. Hi, I'm very touched by your speech, and I'm so encouraged because we are working with a group of people who want to promote the conservative values, and most of them are Chinese Americans. And we launched a YouTube channel called Act for Greater America. And we are asking people around to record a 5-minute video that just talk about conservative values or why they want to vote for Trump. So I would like to invite you to record a video if you want to share with us, like maybe a summary of what you have shared tonight. Maybe pick some points that you want to share most. So we want to keep it short because people now have a short attention span. So, and we would like to push the channel to the mainstream community, not just among the Asian community, just as what you said about your book. So I think we have similar goal. So I really hope that, yeah, I will email you about.
Please do. And you know my email. And the other thing, and this is my email if you don't have it. And the other thing is, if any one of you guys, you know, want me to give this speech to any crowd, I'm always open to giving this speech, talking with you guys, answering any questions that you might have. I love to talk in front of you guys. And, you know, and I really believe in what you guys are doing for equal rights, because it matters so much. You are the key. You're the critical key towards saving our country from identity politics, partially because we don't fit in that category that the left wants us to fit in, because we're neither privileged, we don't easily fit into privileged categories, and we don't easily fit into oppressed categories. And so we have a unique position to speak out. So I would love to be able to, you know, speak on this more to any one of you guys or any one of the groups that you guys are involved with.
Okay, we have another audience from the audience. Jay Chen, can you talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yes, Kenny Xu, nice to meet you.
Hey, Kenny, hey, how are you? Yeah, I kind of have a big question, a big kind of big picture question for you. Mm-hmm. So I guess there's no denying that the left has had overwhelming success in dominating the ideological narratives in our schools, in our media, and in our society in general. So that success obviously didn't happen overnight. Can you maybe talk about what do you think contributed to their success, and why there have been seemingly very little pushback, or at least very ineffective pushback from the conservative side? And how do you envision, maybe I'll try to put you in a conservative strategist, political strategist for this position. How do you envision that that dominance can be challenged properly, and what kind of roadmap do you see? I mean, for me, I don't think that start with sort of electing conservative officials to the offices, and it seems to me it has to be more kind of a more grassroots, groundswell kind of movement to challenge that dominance.
Yeah. You know, that's a really good question. You know, the left, the reason why you're seeing the overwhelming, you know, dominance of the left's ideological narrative in mainstream culture today is because the left took over universities 50 years ago, right? And those are the progenitors of the ideology. I told you guys, I mentioned a little while ago about Harvard. You guys know about, you know, Harvard's discrimination against Asian Americans. And many of you know about Harvard's discrimination against Jewish people. Harvard has always been a very exclusive society that likes to think of itself as the guardian of the next generation's elite, the next generation's leaders. Therefore, it has created a culture of arrogance around itself that other universities emulate. You know, it really, Harvard genuinely believes that dividing people on the basis of race, or that their racial balance in their university is so important that they have to violate American principles of equal rights just to have a good aesthetic balance of race. You know, and that is the ideology that is leaked out to all of these other universities. That's just one example of ideology that's leaked out, but this is why you have, you know, universities like UC Berkeley, you know, universities, and then those, you know, Prop 16, those kinds of things that are being passed. And then obviously, because universities are incubation centers of the next generation of leaders, after that, after it leaks out to those places, then it leaks out into business and corporations. And this is where you get diversity and inclusion. All of you guys, many of you guys are involved in large corporations. I'm sure all of you who are involved in large corporations have heard of diversity and inclusion. And diversity and inclusion is the new trend among the elite, and it is anti-meritocratic.
By the way, I think that many Chinese parents will be appalled hearing that Harvard is the root of all evil.
Yeah, I know. I think that they will be appalled. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately or unfortunately, here's the thing. I think it's a great goal to teach our children to value their education. And if you want to provide a good goal for them, make a goal, get into Harvard or something like that. But, if they don't get into Harvard, don't stress about it, or don't, because, the work that they put in to, get a good education and help themselves that's what's worth it, right? It's not necessarily the college itself. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on parenting, which I'm not even a parent, so I don't even want to say that. But anyway, so it started from universities 50 years ago. It leaked out into businesses, and that's now leaking out into culture right now. And that's why you have the left's complete domination of these narratives. Now, conservatives have been able to survive and struggle because, we've had some inspirational figures in our life, like Ronald Reagan. Some of you might say Donald Trump as well. But in the end, we still have to address the culture. We have to tackle it on both fronts. We have to tackle politics and we have to tackle culture. That's what my book is trying to do, An Inconvenient Minority. I'm trying to write this best-selling book, this game-changing book that will really go into this culture and show these Americans the hypocrisy of their identity politics ideology through the lens of the Asian American experience. And I think it's going to be something that is going to be really interesting to a lot of people. And that's why I'm just grateful to have you guys' support if you guys are so willing.
Okay, Harry Brown, can you talk?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for let me take another question.
Yeah.
I just want to follow up with the previous question, that the left that overwhelmingly dominant in education and the media. Yeah. So Kenny, don't you think this has anything to do with the fact that the number of Christians in this country are dropping down so dramatically over the generations? Kind of a loss of faith in the Christian values in this country. I mean, I know you're a Christian, so I guess you openly talk about this because not many people want to talk about this.
So that's a really, really deep question. I've been thinking about that. You're right. I am a Christian, and this is how it influences like the way I think about things. If you're a Christian, this is, you believe that your worth is ultimately determined by God, right? And so one of the consequences of that, or one of the consequences of that is one of the things that it leads to is that, you are called to not be jealous of other people and of other people's success. If other people seem richer, more successful, or something like that, you say, good for you, good for you. I live the life according to the life that God has called me. Now, here's where the decline in Christianity figures that in. When you stop believing in God, and when you stop, allowing Christian principles to influence your culture, not even stop believing in God. When Christianity has lost its influence on your culture, you replace those things, your worth based on God, with worth based on worldly things, on worldly status, on education, on this manufactured eliteness, right? Harvard. I'm a Harvard guy. I'm an elite person. I'm a person in this elite. I have social status. I have wealth. I have those kinds of things. And so what happens is it makes this game of college admissions so much more hostile and competitive. And this is not just in college admissions, but in business and those kinds of things, than it needs to be. And what happens is that what we have with Asian Americans who work hard and they keep their head down is that people are getting jealous of our success and are getting jealous of the principles that lead to our success because they don't want to put their kids through the same kind of rigor that we put our kids through. So they will use other avenues to try to exclude us, avenues like their own political capital. This is what I was talking about when I said Asians lack cultural and political capital. Because we haven't had the ability to fight back, we allow the left to do things like cultivate racially discriminatory policies against us, like get rid of SATs, get rid of SHSATs. We allow liberals to create policies that they say ostensibly help low-income Blacks and Hispanics, but really don't. The only purpose that they serve is to exclude Asians.
Okay, we have another friend. He's the iPhone. I don't know your name. Can you talk? iPhone,
Hi, is that me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Have you heard of the website? What's the website again? So the website I just write on. So it's the GoFundMe and Kickstarter. I mean, the Kickstarter is a good website for you. Yeah. Firstly, you can publish maybe the first edition on the website and let some people know that earlier. And also, it's like a free commercial advertisement. And yeah, maybe you can try that. And
thank you.
Also, GoFundMe. Yeah, it's not some people that not need money. I mean, but they just want to like make some free advertisement. Like that, okay? That's yeah. I do not have an extra question, okay?
Oh, sure. Sounds good. Yeah, it's something that I'll be considering more as the time towards my book comes in, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. I think I learned one new term. This Democrats is discriminate against Republican, and the Republican discriminate against Democrats. Yeah, thank you. That's something new understanding. Okay, that's very nice.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. Like if you're a Democrat, you're not allowed to join the Republican Party, and if you're a Republican, you're not allowed to join the Democratic Party. I mean, it's discrimination, but I mean, it just happens. That's just what it is in our society. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? I think we're run over our time, but if you do have a question, you can still ask. All right.
This is very good.
Yeah, I think I will return back to Jie. Jie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Seems people are very interested in Kenny's presentation. You can tell from all the questions the audience raised. So thank you so much for being here today and talk to us.
Thank you very much.
To all the audience, okay, I'm back to Chinese. 谢谢大家参与. Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you. And if you guys have any more questions, just feel free to email me, kennymxu@gmail.com, and just go to my website, kennyshu.com. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
回到正题吧，就是我们的会议快要结束了，因为这个时间关系啊，虽然大家都觉得意犹未尽，非常感谢每一位就是来参加会议的听众，特别是提出问题的听众，我们非常的感谢。请大家注意啊，如果你觉得这个论坛非常好的话，一定要记得下周时间，星期日的时候再次来到这个 Zoom meeting。我们这个 CAA Action 的第3次全国网商大会呢，是从8月9日起到11月1日期间，每周日晚，美东时间9点，美西时间6点 ，Zoom meeting ID 是256-492-4036。所以我们这些主持人啊，这些邀请来的嘉宾都会在这里等候您的参与和讨论。谢谢大家。那我宣布会议到此结束，拜拜。
OK, all right. 希望大家把这个我们的会议也可以告诉你的朋友们，让他们也来参加。OK。
不过有一个就是进来的时候等很久，就是要等 host let you in。
对不起，今天是一开头是有点技术问题
OK，
我自己搞错了。OK, all right.
我可以再问一个问题吗？就是
可以。
以前是以那个反那个 S386知名的，就是名声大起的。然后现在发现 CAA 的话，现在对那个386现在都不提了，因为这个386的法案其实比我们刚才提到的 Prop 16更危险。因为我本人就在加州，你想想看，如果说 S386这个通过了以后，接下来我们10年甚至到13年，我们的华人的技术移民都进不来。这样一来的话，我们这种高学历、高层次的移民进不来以后，那 如果说再出现类似于 Prop 16、17、18，我们到时候连反对的人都集合不了。因为我是参加这个反 Prop 16，我是从刚开始到现在，你知道吗？我们现在整个加州不是整个美国，因为加州法案，整个加州100万的华人，我们现在连募集的资金连5000个人他刚刚到，连1%的人都不到，那个出来的抗议的人就更少了。所以说我想说啊。CAA 作为我们华人里面非常优秀的一个团体，我觉得像 S386，因为本身我们 CAA 已经背书了，去反对 S386。现在我看很多 CAA 的群里面都是悄无声息的，现在甚至 CAA 官方的都在做一些就类似于选举的一些东西。我觉得我们其实不要太背离初衷，好吗？
实际上这个对我可以回答你这个问题，我是李忠贵那个。OK，其实我们对的，S386是我们去年曾经轰轰烈烈的搞过许多活动，包括我们还有那个梳理在各个州特别是就是 IT 人员比较多的州，我们树立了许多广告牌儿我们也通过社会募捐来支持我们的活动今年呢，今年是这样，今年就是说。第一，我们仍然在继续，我们仍然有朋友他们我们有理事参加就是反那个 S386的活动，比如吧，前2天我想有一个叫 Neil 的一个朋友，他在那个刚刚发表了一篇文章，实际上在他的文章的最后有一个视频，就是我们这个CAA 的朋友们支持者一块做的其实我们都一直在做，当然了，现在的话因为大选在眼前。还有大概不到2个月，不到2个月，实际上现在2个月少3天，就要大选了，因为这是在眼前的事情。当然，我们更多的朋友可能参加，就是帮助助选，希望通过这个选举人选出主义的候选人，这个总统，主义的候选人当总统，其实这也是挺重要的，因为什么呢？实际上的话就是说一个大头一个小头的问题是吧？386 是一个题目，但是大选的话，我们涉及到更多的题目，你知道吧？包括移民包括这个大政府、小政府包括这个如何就是说像在美国，像刚才前面提到的，实际上我们想推的就是说让这个国家变成一个 merit-based immigration 国家，而不是说按照这个族裔，按照这些政治人物他们想干什么就干什么，是不是？有很多议题，包括加州，像你刚才说你的加州，其实加州还有一个也是一个很重要的议题，就是 Prop 16。实际上 Prop 16一上去的话，我们的华人的话肯定，包括亚裔，包括华裔也会受到很多的这个伤害吧，就是说可能我们的机会会更少。其实很多的议题我们都在参与，都在那什么，但是你知道还是一个轻重缓急吧，是不是？我相信就是我们确实有朋友在做，但是的话就是说我们有理事在参与。我们当然了，现在的重心的话有一点偏了一点出大选，但是我们还是那句话，我们一直在做这些事情。OK。